Hey everyone, welcome to Redistry. If you love wild Reddit stories like crazy cheating tales, spooky scary stories to fall asleep to, or just need something to relax with, you're in the right place. We've got a new Reddit stories compilation for you every week, so make sure to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's get into it. First story. I know what I saw. My husband finally saw it too. The newborn phase is hard. Most parents will tell you hard is an understatement. In reality, you spend most of your time dirty and delirious, desperately trying to avoid nodding off into your third or fourth morning cup of coffee. You're already dealing with constant worry, inconsolable, screaming, endless poopy diapers and wondering what each stain on your shirt is. You have no hope of getting a full night's sleep. You hardly have time to eat, let alone cook. A shower suddenly becomes the height of luxury. What I'm trying to get at is, it's easy to believe your mind may be playing tricks on you when you see something in the shadows in the dead of night while you have a newborn. But this isn't my imagination, and I need to know if any other new parents have seen this too. Well before my due date, we set up the baby monitor. We left the monitor on at night in order to get used to the screen's persistent glow cutting through the darkness of our room. I'm a night owl, frequently staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning, so I spent many nights glancing at the screen and never noticed anything unusual. The same was true for the first few months of my daughter's life, while she slept in the bassinet beside our bed. But on her first night alone in her room, I noticed a particularly dark spot in the corner that seemed to pulse as if it were alive, as if it were breathing. I squinted. I zoomed the camera in. I even went into the room and peeked at the corner myself. I didn't find anything out of the ordinary until I glanced back down at the screen and saw that the spot had moved from the corner to the middle of the room and was now a distinct humanoid silhouette. And it was looking in my direction. Fear engulfed me immediately. I stared at the figure on the screen as it stared at me. I had trouble tearing my eyes away, frozen in terror, but knew I had to look up. I had to see it for myself. But when I looked up, nothing was there. I rushed over and scooped up my daughter, bringing her back to her bassinet in our room, and when I looked back at the monitor as I plugged it in, I noticed the figure was gone. What was still lingering was the chill that had been sent up my spine and an unshakable feeling that I was being watched. I spent the rest of the night staring at the door as if I was waiting for someone to come barging through it. It was a week before my husband could convince me to let our daughter sleep in her room again. "You're tired, you're stressed. You probably just saw a shadow," he kept repeating. I finally gave in just to make him drop it. I spent the entire night sitting up in bed, eyes glued to the monitor, scanning constantly for pulsating shadows, but none showed up. After a few nights with no overnight visitors, I began to relax. After a few weeks, I started to believe that my husband must have been right. It must have been a figment of my imagination. But last night I rolled over to take one last peek before going to sleep for the night, expecting to see my daughter sleeping in her crib. But she wasn't in her crib at all. She wasn't even in the room. The shadow was standing right over her empty cot. Its head snapped up in the direction of the camera as if this thing was trying to look into it. To look at me. I immediately smacked my husband awake and shoved the monitor in front of his face. "Where's the baby?" I yelled as he rubbed his eyes, trying to come quickly back to consciousness. "What are you talking about?" He yawned, finally focusing on the monitor eyes, suddenly going wide and moving to scan my undoubtedly unhinged expression. "What's that thing?" he asked me, not waiting for the answer as he sprung out of bed, running into her room as I scanned every corner of ours, as if she could have magically teleported in here on her own. I didn't see her anywhere, so I followed my husband hesitantly for some reason and made my way to the nursery doorway, monitor in hand. On it, I could see my husband frantically searching high and low in the room, but more importantly, I could see the figure looming over his each and every move, reaching out, trying to touch him, when my husband suddenly whipped around, panting, as if he expected someone to be there and yet saw nothing. But I could see it. From the doorway, I glanced up at them, but instead of seeing my husband, I was met with the face of the thing inches from my own, with deep black eyes staring into my soul itself. The skin was covered in boils so full they could burst at any moment. Giant, jagged yellow teeth leaked drool over stretched, cracked lips. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. It opened its mouth and I expected my ears to be met with a disgusting gurgling, but instead a sweeping crescendo of infant cries engulfed me. Not just one infant, but many all screeching in perfect harmony, transfixing me with their heart-shattering sounds. The screams became an all-encompassing roar, growing louder and louder, before suddenly stopping altogether, the beast vanishing right before my eyes. I then heard a quieter, familiar cry from my daughter's crib. She lay there squirming a bit, beginning to fuss, and my husband and I exchanged confused looks before he picked her up and brought her back to our room. I don't think I'll ever be letting her sleep in that room again. The thing that's really bothering me, though, is that something feels just the slightest bit off about my daughter. Like she's changed in some way? Has anyone ever encountered a monster like this? Second story. The tall stick entity. I wanted to share a truly bizarre, terrifying, and unexplainable experience I had growing up. To make note, my childhood home was a hotbed for paranormal activity. I could honestly write a book with the amount of stories I have, but this one was different from all the rest. So to start off, we lived on a small stretch of secluded highway in a wooded area. Our home was nestled on a plot of land that was a few acres, and the area surrounding us was federally protected land of the Wildlife Refuge, which means unless your house is grandfathered in, then no one can purchase land or build in this area. So we had no neighbors. Our house was a 300-year-old colonial house and held a lot of history. There was knowledge of Native Americans once residing there, and a lot of war stories, with the Civil and Revolutionary War happening on that land. There was definitely a heavy negative energy in that house, and property you always felt like you were being watched from every angle of the woods, and so many people who visited would become uneasy immediately and state their discomfort and needing to leave. My family and I have countless stories we experienced individually or with one another. This particular experience was shared between myself and two brothers, so like many nights after dinner, my dad would tell me or one of my brothers to go out back and feed the dog. This was a scary task because it would be pitch black and our dog would be near the tree line of woods, which for some reason, that section of woods would give all of us an uneasy feeling anytime we go near it. And it didn't matter the time of day, it always was creepy. But being at night was definitely terrifying. So no matter which one of us was told to go out and feed the dog, we would never leave a man behind and would always go out in a trio, because we knew better than that. Because we wouldn't want to be left to go alone when it came our turn. So on this particular night, I was probably around 11 years old, my brothers being 10 and the other 7. So we would always do the same thing. So whoever was told by Dad to feed the dog, they were the one who had to carry the bowl out, and the other two would huddle close with the person with bowl in the middle. We would walk extremely slow, all of us looking different directions surveying the property, but keeping the conversations very lighthearted and being silly to keep from getting scared before completing the task. So once we reached our dog, this is where the person holding the bowl would get screwed. Because right before you had the chance to put it down, the other two siblings would scream something scary like "Jeepers Creepers" or "The Jersey Devil," while hauling ass back to the house, so you would be left standing alone before getting the chance to run with your siblings. So on this night, my brother was the one who had to hold the bowl, and as we walked out to head towards the backyard, something felt off, like the air felt static and charged like how it feels before a lightning storm, and we could hear our dog barking like crazy, which was unusual, and as we got into sight of our dog, we see him standing on his hind legs with the leash pulled completely tight because whatever he was barking at, he was trying with all he had to break out from that collar and go after it. That's when we heard loud branches snapping and looked towards the direction our dog was barking in. We then see this giant black stick figure that was as tall as the trees. It was walking over this huge brush pile we had, which was why we were hearing branches breaking. The way it walked was almost mechanical in a way, and its presence felt very ominous and gave us a very dreadful feeling. At first it seemed like it didn't notice us and was just walking by, but then it turned towards us, and that's when we booked it for the house, my brother throwing the bowl of food in the air and feeling like our legs were jello. We all saw the same thing, and it scared us so badly, and unlike many stories you hear, my parents actually believed us. Anyway, fast forward years and years later, and I was having a conversation with my coworker, and we would talk about paranormal topics quite a bit. So during this conversation, she asked me if I ever heard of Native American stick people, and as soon as she said it, I knew what she was referring to. She then tells me about these giant stick figures out in the woods that Native Americans have seen and are supposedly a totem of evil spirits, and if you encounter one, and it goes after you, It then can possess you and cause you to do harm. I was so freaked out because up until then I had never heard of such a thing, but knowing the Native American history of that land, it makes me believe that they are related.